Section 42 of ambulance legislation states that others must give right of way to ambulances. That is, any ambulance travelling at speed with lights and sirens should be given clear passage through traffic. While driving at speed, there is an increased likelihood of accidents or similar incidents occurring. However, driving recklessly unnecessarily increases the potential of such incidents. The Work Health and Safety Act 2011 outlines that employees are aware of the hazards and risks that may occur while driving Code 1 and should ensure they act in ways that eliminate or minimise the risks where possible. Maxine was driving recklessly and therefore increased the likelihood of an accident occurring. The Road Traffic Act 1995 indicates that if you're involved in any way, you should stop at the scene of an accident. Maxine did stop at the accident to help the driver of the other vehicle, resulting in a delayed response to the original case they had been called to. This analysis will determine whether Maxine's actions fall below a standard considered acceptable and reasonable, or whether her actions are defensible.
As paramedics, we are expected to act with integrity and impartiality and manage any conflicts of interest in order to fulfil our professional responsibilities. We are required to assess our fitness for duty, and the principles of bioethics govern our actions as paramedics through non-maleficence and beneficence, where non-maleficence is the duty of doing no harm and protecting others from harm, and beneficence is the duty of benefiting others. Deontological ethics follows the belief that for something to be ethically correct, it must adhere to the rules that are in place. I have an obligation to adhere to road rules, and despite being on my way to an emergency patient, it is the law that if you cause an accident, you must stop. If I didn't stop, I would be saying that it is okay for everyone to drive away after having an accident, according to Kantianism's universality rule. The Ambulance Service Act outlines that the function of the ambulance service is to protect others from injury or death. In that moment after the impact, as much as I wanted to continue on to the child in arrest, I had to not only uphold the law and my professional code of conduct, but also my own virtues. In that moment, when every part of me was telling me to keep going to help the child, I knew that I wouldn't forgive myself if I did not stop and help the innocent woman that I had put in danger.
Maxine's actions and urgency are understandable in responding to an apneic infant. However, what is difficult to justify is the degree of recklessness with which she was manoeuvring her vehicle through traffic, including a deliberate decision to proceed through red lights at an intersection without due caution, when personal safety is a guiding principle of paramedic work. If you are injured, you are unable to help anyone else, and arriving safely to a job is the first priority. While operating a vehicle in emergency circumstances justifies the use of lights and sirens and the breaking of road rules according to the Australian road rules, both of these must be done safely and carefully, as paramedics have a duty of care not to endanger members of the public under the Work Health and Safety Act 2001 and Civil Liability Act 2003. Maxine took a foreseeable and obvious risk by running a red light without stopping to take caution. The risk of doing so was significant, and a reasonable person in the circumstances would have taken precautions by slowing down to ensure cars were giving way before proceeding. Thus, Maxine has breached her duty under the Civil Liability Act and Work Health and Safety Act. I have found that the burden of taking precautions would likely be arriving less than 30 seconds later than would have happened without taking due precautions, all the while risking not arriving at all. Additionally, the likelihood of causing harm of reasonable severity was high, and factual causation exists in this circumstance according to the Civil Liability Act, as had it not been for Maxine failing to take precautions, the accident would not have occurred. After causing the accident, Maxine made the correct decision to stop and render aid to the passengers of the hatchback with which she made contact, as required under the Transport Operations Regulation of 2009. Maxine was not to know that further help would not arrive in time to save the infant in respiratory arrest that she was initially dispatched to attend. Maxine is also required to give her particulars to a police officer as someone was injured in the crash. In South Australia, an ambulance officer has been charged with reckless driving causing death after a rollover of a bariatric ambulance when travelling in non-emergency circumstances. The passenger being transported did die at the accident scene, which may have resulted in the charges. As this case fortunately did not result in death, Maxine will not face similar charges of reckless driving causing death, but could face charges in relation to reckless driving causing injury under the Work Health and Safety Act. Driving of an ambulance vehicle is one area of paramedic work where paramedics are not immune from prosecution of civil claims, particularly when acting criminally, as can be the case in traffic accidents. Maxine may face disciplinary action under the Ambulance Service Act as having caused a notifiable incident in the form of serious injury by breaching her duty of care and performing her duties carelessly. Whether Maxine and the ambulance service could face a civil case is yet to be determined. She may face charges from the injured driver or the family of the deceased infant due to delayed response. The onus would be on the civil plaintiff under the Civil Liability Act of 2003 to prove that either the infant's death or the woman's injury is as a direct result of Maxine's driving causing the accident. In the case of the infant, it may be difficult to prove that the infant would have survived even if the initial paramedics had arrived as planned a few minutes post the time that the accident occurred.
The probability of an accident involving ambulance vehicles is known amongst the profession, especially when driving at speed. Maxine breached her duty of care as a paramedic by driving recklessly and not approaching a red light intersection with due care, and instead she sped up. As a result, she caused another person injury and delayed the response time to the apneic infant. Section 31 of the Work Health and Safety Act 2011 outlines that a Category 1 offence of reckless conduct has been committed as Maxine engaged in conduct that was not professional and exposed the passengers of the other vehicle to an increased risk of serious injury or death. Due to the unfortunate nature of the case and Maxine allowing her emotions to get in the way of her judgment, she decided to take a risk and not drive as safely as she normally would. In a similar situation, a reasonable person would have adhered to their code of conduct to ensure that the safety of other road users was upheld. Once the accident occurred, Maxine responded in the only defensible way. In the interest of public safety, Maxine should be required to undergo additional driver training alongside mandatory psychiatric evaluation to ensure she is fit for duty. The Ambulance Service Act 1991, Section 3, outlines that where a risk is known, such as driving Code 1 through an intersection, a person must act in a manner that reduces or eliminates risk. Due to Maxine not adhering to legislative rules, it is recommended that Maxine be reprimanded and suspended from duty with pay until the case is able to be finalised in accordance with the Ambulance Service Act. It is recommended that the ambulance service implements a new requirement that all staff returning to work after a long period of absence should undergo evaluation to ensure they are safe to return to duty, both physically and psychologically. Maxine acted in accordance with the values of Paramedics Australasia after causing the incident, acting with responsibility and integrity by stopping to treat the injured woman who she hit, and respected the need to attend to the injuries which resulted from her own negligent driving.